All right, welcome back. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start investigating how B affects the graph of sine and cosine. Okay, so what we're going to do is now we're adding B. So now we've got y equals a sine bx and y equals a cosine bx, right? So we already know what A does, right, to the graph. It's either going to vertically stretch or vertically shrink the graph. But now what does B do? Now A, remember, just like other translations when you studied translations in algebra or something like that, we know that any multiplication outside the function affects the y values. That's what we saw with the A, right? So when you multiply the function by a real number, you're multiplying all of the y values on the graph by that same number, and so that's where you get the vertical stretch or vertical compression or shrinkage. Okay, but what if you're inside the function? Remember what happens when you're inside the function. That's going to be what? It's going to be a horizontal stretch or shrinkage or compression. Okay, so same thing going on here with B. So you're multiplying all the values of x that go into sine by B. Okay, so let's start by comparing these two functions with our a sine x and a cosine x. Okay, we know that the period is 2 pi, right? So think about what B is doing to x, right? So, for example, we'll get to the examples, but think about the fact that it's stretching or compressing it, right? So what's happening to the period? Well, the period is also changing, right? So, and in fact, the way it works is that we know the period for these functions here, a sine x and a cosine x, go from 0 to 2 pi, okay? It makes sense that these two functions are going to go from 0 to what? They're going to go from 0 to not 2 pi, right? They're going to go from 0 to 2 pi divided by B. Okay? And again, in this case, we're going to assume that B is a positive real number. Okay, so the period does change. The period is dependent on what B is. Obviously, if B is 1, right, then the period is 2 pi. Okay, so we'll do a definition. We'll introduce the definition of a period for these two functions, and then we'll do some examples.